Hey everyone, welcome to another one of my Elden Ring boss reviews. This bad boy is going to be on the Erdtree Burial Watchdog, who is a surprisingly good boy despite the fact that he's not going to win any agility contests anytime soon. This guy's as stiff as they come. I encountered him in the Stormfoot Catacombs. He was the third post-tutorial boss I fought, the second one I beat, and the first thing I thought when I saw him was, how did a Dark Souls 2 boss end up here? That game is very good, but I find so many of its bosses to be clunky and poorly animated. And here, I was fresh off of being destroyed by Margit the Fell Omen, who is a very fluid and agile boss, so seeing this guy creak around was kind of a stark contrast. But while the boss animations in Dark Souls 2 feel floaty and unintentional, the Erdtree Burial Watchdog's animations feel very intentional, like they are part of his story. Like, as soon as you enter into the boss room, his tail lights up on fire, almost like a light switch, which tells you that this guy was inactive until you showed up. And then he starts moving, and there's just no fluidity whatsoever. It's like he hasn't moved in centuries and didn't properly stretch his calves before this fight. But look at him, he looks like crap. He's all covered in moss. He's wearing a crown like a choke collar for some reason. His cape is all tattered. And he's just constantly sneering. Does he look like he'd care about pre-boss fight stretching and practice?
We're in here talking about practice. Listen, we're talking about practice.
Essentially, all signs point to this guy having been dormant for eons. And while he might be putting up a good fight here, he is falling apart. Every attack he makes looks like it may be his last. And when he does this flame attack, it looks like he's struggling mightily with some nasty acid reflux. All of these little details add up, and along with the significance of their name, it's implied that these guys were once much stronger, but much like the world in every FromSoft game, they are in the process of deteriorating and diminishing, and when you fight them, they're using that last bit of strength that they've got to defend the secrets of the Erdtree. And yes, I'm saying these guys. I've only fought one, but my guess is there are many of them. So my first impression of these guys was not great. But after experiencing the fight, I'm glad they animated him like he's got crippling arthritis. It just works thematically. In terms of visual and audio design, he's not super unique. He makes no real sound, which is something I'd kill for with my dogs. Something tells me that if someone walked by my house, my dogs would be barking their heads off while this guy would be purposefully ignoring it. Though a little life would be nice, I'm not entirely sure this guy is even alive. He reminds me more of a stone golem who's been activated specifically for this fight. And all of his movements just feel so automated, like he was given some very basic commands and he's going to follow them to a T. And as a dog owner, this is very impressive. This guy's either the world's best trained dog or he's not a dog at all. And something tells me that if dogs looked like this, people wouldn't be going out of their way to get them as pets. He looks more like a grotesque gargoyle. Incredibly well-trained grotesque gargoyle, but a grotesque gargoyle nonetheless. But is this guy really some soulless automaton? Like, who puts a cape and a crown on a statue like this? And even though he has this same hideous expression on his face for most of the fight, he does show one tiny glimmer of emotion. So I think it's up in the air whether these guys are alive or not. In terms of his boss arena, this is like a nondescript crypt. It's got 4 pillars in the corners that he can knock down, which is a time-honored video game boss activity. Though it's kind of pointless here because this is not a boss fight where you're like running to hide behind things. There is this horrific imagery, but that would be more effective if I didn't see it in every catacombs I've played through so far. Gameplay-wise, this guy's kind of surprising. It looks like he can barely move. All of his initial attacks are so telegraphed, he just seems like he's going to be really easy. But all of that rigidity has a benefit. He has all these nasty follow-ups and counters, and there's just a weird rhythm to this fight. Like, it takes ages for him to start an attack, but then he can just spring right into another attack without moving his body. And his plunge attack feels like it's going to be a one-off, but then he does it 3 times in a row, which caught me off guard at least twice. And I just found that cadence to be pretty challenging, which is why I died to him 3 times, with all of those deaths taking less than a minute. And since he does all these quick and erratic follow-ups, I found I could usually only get 1 hit in. If I tried for more or tried to be fancy, I would just get knocked down. And his hits pack a punch. Like, he might not have fought in millennia, but he is not rusty whatsoever. Damaging him, on the other hand, is kind of tough. He's pretty tough-skinned. He's made out of stone. And so this fight is all about chipping away like a stone chipper. What the hell's a stone chipper? Did I mean rock carver? Well, that doesn't work either. Well, I'll keep chipping away at that joke and eventually I'll get it. I already talked about his indigestion attack. This is the one attack I'm not really a fan of, partly because he only used it twice in my 4 attempts against him. But for whatever reason, the attack itself just feels a little bit off. Like, I love the visuals of him nearly shaking himself to death while he's spewing forth that flame, but I think his robotic sword swings nail the theme of this boss way better than this flame attack. When you do kill him, he drops the Noble Sorcerer Ashes, which makes me wonder, was he a Noble Sorcerer? I'm assuming no. Like, it just seems odd that a sorcerer who couldn't get into Raya Lucaria would be transformed into this stone watchdog / gargoyle. Plus, like I said, I think there's more of these guys out there, so I think this drop is meaningless lore-wise. So now, while the footage of me beating him plays over this, let me rate this guy, let me rank this guy, and let me give you my stats for this guy. I will give him a rating of a good boy. He could teach my dogs a little bit about training, or being a gargoyle masquerading as a dog. So a 3 out of 5. For my rankings, I'm looking at all the post-tutorial bosses I've beaten so far, which is a grand total of 2. And currently, the Erdtree Burial Watchdog is at number 1. His competition isn't much. I wasn't a huge fan of the Demi-Human Chiefs, but I do love the atmosphere of this boss fight, and I just like the vibe of this guy looking like he needs routine maintenance. And he poses a decent challenge without being cheap. Now some stats. I first fought him 11 hours and 10 minutes into the game, which is kind of late considering he's the 3rd boss I fought post-tutorial. I did kill him at 11 hours and 19 minutes. That's a fight every 2 minutes and 16 seconds. This wasn't the Demi-Human Chiefs where I had to leave and come back like 5 times. Nah, this was all in one sitting. I died 3 times to this guy before beating him on my 4th attempt. None of these were intense edge-of-the-seat battles, but also none of my deaths were cheap, even if I died in under a minute each time. Attempt 3 was the shortest battle, 38 seconds. The 4th and final attempt was the longest at 4 minutes and 8 seconds. It would have been shorter if I hadn't stupidly put a sacred enchantment on my flail, which reduced my damage output. And the average fight duration was 1 minute 35 seconds, but again, for the first 3 attempts, it was just 44 seconds. But that's the Erdtree Burial Guard Dog. I got the name wrong. The Erdtree Burial Watchdog. God, that name bothers me so much. I have no clue if I said it correctly earlier in the video. And I know in my inept walkthrough videos, I definitely butchered his name multiple times. But thanks for watching. If you like this, please like and subscribe to my channel. I have a grand plan of reviewing every boss in every FromSoft game eventually. I also do sarcastic and comedic narratives of my playthroughs of these games, so check them out.